Okay, welcome everyone. I am Maria Russo. I'm the children's books editor here at the New York Times. My guest today is Jeff Smith. Welcome, Jeff.
Welcome. Hi, thanks for having me. Great to be here.
It is so exciting for me. As you know, I am a huge fan of the Bone books, which is Jeff's graphic novel series, originally for adults, but it has become a phenomenon, a worldwide phenomenon in children's books. The Bone graphic novel series starring the three Bone cousins.
Yes,
and
that's this.
There it is. There is the first one out from Boneville. Jeff is here today because there's a special new development in the world of Bone, which is that he's done a picture book for littler kids, for pre-Bone readers.
Yeah, that's right. Right.
Called Smiley's Dream Book, featuring Smiley Bone. Could you just show us a little bit about Smiley's Dream Book and what it looks like, and then we can maybe talk about why you did it.
Here it is, Smiley's Dream Book. It's brand new. It's coming out July 31st. And it is my first children's book featuring a Bone character. And I chose Smiley Bone because he's the one that, I know he's the one that's the most fanciful, the most free-spirited. And since I wanted to do it about dreaming about flying, he was the one I picked to do it. So we'll just read the first couple of pages.
Read a couple of pages so people can see.
There's not a lot of words, so this won't take very long. So it's a beautiful sunny day, and Smiley Bone says, "What a beautiful day for a walk in the woods," and he hears some birds singing. Can you see all this?
Yep, I think we're good. Yeah, there you go. Shift it over a tiny bit. Yep,
all right.
You're good.
Listen to all the birds singing. I wonder how many there are. 1, 2. This one has a hat. 3, 4, 5, 6. Won't take very long to read it. We're almost there. 7, 8. But look, the birds have, they're kind of getting playful with him, and they've drawn him up through the trees, and suddenly he's in the air with them, and he's still counting.
Flying.
9, 10, 11, 12, and suddenly he's surrounded by a flock of happy singing birds, and he thinks to himself, "Oh well, I guess there are a lot of birds singing, too many to count." So he just rolls over and goes with the flow, which is Smiley Bone in a nutshell.
Right.
All right. So
but wait, let's show that one more page turn, because then we have to show that in the Jeff Smith world there is always a little bit of a darkness.
Oh, not
it's
that.
Not all,
I'm
it's
showing
not
this
all.
one.
Let's just get to the next.
This guy.
There we go.
There we go.
So it turns out not all is a walk in the park there.
Oh, that's right. You can't have a story without something
a little bit of
scary.
conflict. So
and especially if it's me, I love to scare little kids.
Right.
So. Not
it's
really.
Just a gently scary moment, and then
not really. I was actually asked that by a little girl in a panel in San Diego. She raised her hand. She says, "Why is it that you like to scare little children?" I said, "I don't like to scare them. It just makes stories fun." So this is where Bone started. I brought with me a copy of Bone #1 from 1991 in July. This was the very first comic book. It was originally published in black and white.
And you self-published that.
Self-published it. My wife and I published it together.
This is great inspiration for people working at home, not sure where to take their work. You can always self-publish and put it out there.
I got tired of waiting for someone else's permission to do the story. Editors just kept they were rejecting it, and I couldn't change it to make them like it. Anyway, I thought for today's demonstration I would redraw this, but with an updated look to all the characters.
Fantastic, because these characters now have been around for a couple decades now.
25 years,
right?
Yeah, a very long time.
And you've drawn them many, many times. Okay. So tell us about your techniques. So anyone out there, I should say, as you can start sketching, and I'll just remind our audience, you can always ask Jeff questions, put them in the comments, and I will ask him. I know that Jeff has many fans of all ages, and that's kind of one of the coolest things about the Bone books, right, is that these books are read by 7-year-olds and by 80-year-olds, and they really work for all of those age groups. Something about these three little Bone characters who stumble into this fantasy world of adventure and peril, really, and a great kind of plot of sort of like as Jeff has said, the main human character, a girl named Thorn, is the Luke Skywalker character, right, Jeff?
That's right. That's a good way to put it. It's sort of like Bugs Bunny meets the Lord of the Rings, or if you took I don't know, the Odyssey and threw the Marx Brothers in it.
Right, right. That is great. And or Melville, which is a big sort of backstory in Bone, right? Moby Dick.
Yeah, and it turns out you're a Moby Dick fan.
I'm a Moby Dick fan, so that
brace yourselves.
This is
brace yourselves, audience. This could get bad.
It's like Donald Duck meets Moby Dick, and it's everything. Bone just has everything. It seems like the whole world is in these books, and so there's something for everyone. So here we have. So which Bone is that now?
Well, this is Phone Bone. He's the main. He's Bone basically. He's Phone Bone. He's our
romantic hero.
He's our star. Yes, and I don't know how well this shows up on camera, but I'm drawing with a light blue pencil, and this is the way we used to draw them in the old days before Cintiqs, when we used to have to film our finished cartoon, like in the newspapers.
Right.
And you had to have, if you used a regular pencil, the regular pencil would show up on film, but a light blue would not.
So you're still used to the blue pencil,
yes,
like lots of artists.
Yes, I'm definitely old school. Not by choice, but because I'm just old.
Well, hey, it worked, right?
Yeah.
All those years. We have a question from Sabine Sauter. How long do you take to make one of these comics?
Each chapter in one of the books. They're the same. It's the same ones that were in the comics. So that one I just showed you, that was in black and white. Here it is in color. Each chapter took me 2 to 2.5 months to do, and at breakneck speed, as fast as I could go.
Like how many hours a day were you in there?
A good amount. I probably a solid 8, and on deadline, meaning it's the FedEx is on their way.
Oh wow!
And it could be up to like 20 hours a day for a week at a time.
Fantastic! Well, we have people watching from all over the world, and leave your comments, and I will. Relay them to Jeff. Giselle Calejo is saying, my students adore your books. That to me is one of the most interesting parts of the Bone story, how these books were underground comics, right? These were for adults. They were in the sort of back alley comic stores being sold. And what happened? How did they get in front of children? How did they become beloved by children?
Well, you can tell from the books, the way they look, that I adored children's comics. When I was a kid, I loved Peanuts. I loved this comic strip called Pogo. I loved, the Casper and Little Lulu comics. Yeah. I liked. A big favorite of mine was Uncle Scrooge, Donald Duck, drawn by Carl Barks. And so what I was doing is I wasn't really making a children's book per se, but I was trying to make a comic book that would appeal to other people like me who just loved those comic books in their youth. So I was doing a grown-up comic book that was supposed to look like a kid's comic. It looked like a Harvey comic or a Disney
as you say,
comic.
all those comics you're mentioning, they're kids' comics, but like Peanuts is for everyone,
yes.
right?
Yeah, and that was actually
for everyone.
Exactly. That is totally right. The newspaper strips and the comics were designed not for the kids in the family, but for the kids and the adults who were actually paying for the paper.
Right.
So you had a real range of tone and.
And so you've got all ages. We have people from all over the world here: Ireland, Warsaw, Sicily, Delaware, Lebanon, all saying. McLean Kirkwood is saying, I remember getting the first 3 Bone books from my cousin on Christmas. It was my first exposure to graphic novels, and I instantly fell in love. I just wanted to say thank you, Jeff Smith, for having such an amazing and positive impact on my life. Matthew Kaplowitz is saying,
Thank you, everybody. That's amazing. Thank you.
Matthew just wants to say how awesome you are and how much I've loved your work for ages. And Jody Noble from Oaxaca, Mexico. So glad to come across this broadcast. Thank you. So you've really ended up making a huge impact.
One of the ways, and I'm only half joking, that I think is why it became a real children's book, was that it took me 12 years to tell the story. I wanted to tell a single story that had a beginning and a middle and an end, a real literary structure, and that was very rare in the comic book industry. It had been done, Mouse, Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns, Watchmen. It was proven to be done, but it had not been done on the scale that I was really wanting to try to push comics to, that at least not in the U.S. So it was a bit of a risk, and it took me 12 years to do it. So here's my theory.
Oh, here comes the ink.
And ink's coming out. Here we go. Pelican drawing ink, Black India ink. Shake it up. Ink tends to settle. A lot of people wonder how you can get the ink to be a little darker. Well, you just shake it up a little bit. So that's what's going on there. I'm going to bring in some paper towels so that when it spills, or hopefully it won't spill,
all right,
we'll have we'll be all right.
Okay, so tell us your theory.
So my theory is that during the 12 years it took me to finish Bone, what happened to my little... Oh, I used my little live art thing. But this is actually going to be my brush up. My theory is that the 12 years it took to do the story, I eventually saw guys bringing their girlfriends, and they'd wait in line to get their book signed at Comic-Con or something like that. And pretty soon it's their wives. And their wives are now hooked on various books, Bones, Sandman, other books like that. And then all of a sudden they started bringing in kids. And that's somewhat facetious, but probably the true reason is I started collecting Bone into these. We weren't calling them graphic novels back then. That term was...
It was just comics.
It was just comics, or we call them trade paperbacks. And that allowed libraries to stock them on shelves, and I had no idea that was happening.
And this was your publisher, Scholastic, right?
No, this was when just the J.
Oh, this is your big version here.
Yeah, no, we did little versions.
Oh, you did little ones too.
Yes, but they were in black and white.
We should show this giant one here.
This is the full story.
That was when you self-published, or not? At this point, you have a real publishing company.
No,
right?
It's Cartoon Books.
Yeah.
This is my wife and I.
This is your company.
And this was the very end of our run. We did Bone in black and white. And it's close to 1,400 pages, and it's the whole story.
So this was in libraries?
Yeah, no. We published it in 9 shorter volumes during the 12 years.
Okay.
Like once a year, basically, we would collect the books. I better pay attention here.
Sorry, I'm distracting you from the inking. So, but it's true that once...
I'm gonna have to flip this around, people. Don't get seasick.
But it was librarians who discovered that the kids were coming in.
That was it. That's what was happening. From the mid-'90s to about 2002, I had no idea, but it was becoming very popular in libraries, in public libraries and in school libraries. And I remember in the year 2002, a number of us, this is still when comics were not really sold in like Barnes & Noble or on Amazon, in fact. We had been rejected by Amazon because we were self-published and we were comics and we couldn't really sell them. It's hard to even fathom that nowadays because it's everywhere.
It's crazy.
But in 2002, the American Library Association held a pre-conference gathering, and the topic that year was graphic novels, and they invited a bunch of us that were big graphic novel makers, myself, Neil Gaiman, Art Spiegelman, Colleen Doran, and some library experts that were experts on graphic novels. And I remember before we got together, all of us cartoonists got together, we were like rubbing our hands and we were like going, oh, goody, this is it, this is our big chance, to convince people that comics are art, that they're really literature, they're books, they're reading, and we can start carrying us in their libraries. Well, we started talking and they were like, no, we're already carrying you. We want to know more about them. We want to know
we want more.
When are you going to do more of them? And they told us that at that time, this was 2002, that whatever metric they used to determine, how many books are checked out or borrowed or whatever, all the books were going down. All categories were going down in checkouts, except for graphic novels, which had gone up like tremendously, like 300%, and that was back then. So that we kind of in the comic biz consider that sort of like the tipping point.
That was the moment
where librarians, and the librarians also called them graphic novels, and so that was it.
Once that sort of label that sounds more literary.
Well, I guess it also sounds kind of, I don't know. I think it's strange. I still think they're comic books.
Yeah, well, and I think that the hardcore fans will still call them comics. But the main point is that the literary world, the educational establishment, has realized that when kids or adults read these books, they're reading literature.
Yes,
these are great works of literature.
There are still some holdouts. But I think we can outlast them.
Yeah, I do. When I talk to kids across the country, I ask them what their favorite books are. I would say over half will first say a graphic novel. So.
And I'm not a teacher, I'm not a librarian, but I was a kid, and I learned to read from comics. So I can say absolutely for a fact, when a kid is looking at a graphic novel, they are reading.
They completely are. And especially, Jean Luen Yang, another great graphic novelist for kids, has really made this point. As our culture becomes more visual, it's more and more important to teach kids how to read visually, right? How to read a story, a narrative in images, and how to follow directions in pictures. So.
Yeah, and I find that kids very intuitively follow comics. I know some adults that didn't really read comics when they were younger do have a bit of a trouble going, what do I look at first?
Right, which way do the panels go?
Yeah, but it's, you start at the upper left corner, you read left to right, top to bottom,
right.
And even within each panel you read from the upper left to the balloons, you go in the same direction. It's actually very intuitive.
Yeah.
And you use I had a very interesting conversation this morning. We were talking about sort of like the experience of reading comics is not like, it's not the same as reading exactly, because there's so much visual information in the drawings, and you process the drawings across the different panels. How far a person moves is the drawing. If somebody's standing in one panel and he's laying down in the next panel, the reader has to make that person lay down or fall down, and the context is always like if there's a banana peel involved.
Yeah.
Sorry, is my head in the picture?
You're good. All right. Yeah, very interesting. Well, we have the questions are pouring in. Can I throw some of them at you while you are?
No, I'm bored.
Are inking?
No, go ahead.
Okay, let's see. Okay, here's some that I can answer that are just very factual. Martha Murray saying, who sells these books? Well, so the Bone books are published by Scholastic. They're in every bookstore, any bookstore that you go into or can order from online. There's how many are in the Bone series?
The Bone series proper is 9 books.
9 books, and then there's the special tribute edition.
I have the first 3 right here, which is out from Boneville. That's the first one. The Great Cow Race, that's the second one. You can kind of see how thick they are. They're all about 150 pages approximately. And here's the third one, Eyes of the Storm. There are 9 total in the whole story. And the big fat book we showed you earlier was...
Right, and this is sort of the more grown-up
edition. We'll throw that one back
edition.
in there. This was actually the whole story put into one big book before Scholastic published it, and I had just published it myself. But now Scholastic publishes it, and so it's very, very, very
And
easy
let's
to
give
find.
a shout out to Scholastic for taking a kind of a leap with these books, right? When they first were published as children's books, again, we've said you didn't intend them as children's books. There's some adult characters having adult lives.
Only a little. I mean, it takes place in a Lord of the Rings type medieval
it's an
fantasy.
alternative fantasy universe, but there's a bar.
Yeah, there's where
they hang out.
Yeah, there is some beer consumed, but not by Foambone or Thorin, the 2 main characters. They don't do that. Right.
So there was a little bit of concern. You have said.
Well, Bone has been on one of the most banned books in America. A couple of years ago, it was number 10 on the list.
Incredible.
And number 5 was 50 Shades of Grey.
Right.
Maya Angelou was number 2. So
you're in good company with Maya Angelou, at least.
Yes.
Right. So kids can understand and can handle being in this world. But as one thing you have pointed out that is interesting is that your choice not to use any swear words.
Well, I didn't put anything in here that kids really shouldn't see. I mean, it wasn't my goal to. My goal was to do something that I might have read in the funny pages. So, if Gary Trudeau can do Doonesbury without a single swear word, and it's one of the most sophisticated pieces of art I've ever experienced, or Crazy Cat, no swear words. If they can do it, I can do it, and that was my goal.
Well put.
And it was weird at the time because when I was doing this, the new underground or the alternative comics, it was very vogue to be realistic
really
and use swear words and talk about things that were but I was doing something different. I was doing an up to date kind of a kids comic.
Right.
With social commentary. It's in there if you want to find it.
Oh, yeah.
That was one.
In fact, I want to read just something from the very first page of the first one. But before we do that, we have a bunch of questions about your technique. We should be really quick. Sally Sage from Johannesburg is asking, what type and size brush do you use? A couple of other people asking about your brush too.
This is it's a Winsor Newton Sable Hair number 7, finest sable. It says Series 7. Finest Sable, Winsor Newton. It's a watercolor brush. It's I only use the one size. As you can see, I'm rushing, so these aren't my best lines, but I can get thick and very thin lines from the same brush. Like here, I'm going to go around the shoe, and I can get a nice big fat weighty bottom, and then I can fill in little lines that are much smaller.
Oh, excellent. Well, I have so many questions here. Let me see. What can I give you? All right. Here's one. Let's see if you can give us a little bit of this. This is probably a long answer, but maybe a short version. Alex Apostolos Kazanas is saying, "What's your process for breaking a story from start to finish?"
That is an excellent question, and it's actually a very, very, very important step because you've got to figure out what your story is. And you kind of need to figure out if it's a story worth telling. And my trick for deciding that is usually, like in a big story like Bone, if I'm working on a chapter in the middle, I kind of know where I left off. And the first thing I got to do is decide where I'm going to end in the next one. And usually there's an image floating around, just stewing around in my head, flipping around here again. Oh, almost knocked over the ink. That is the centerpiece. Like I might have one image in mind that is something I'm going to build the story
toward. Like a scene?
It could be a joke. It could be I could just kind of picture I really want to see Phone, Bone, and Thorn in a certain setting, and I might work the story around that. Let me draw Smiley's head real quick, and then I will pull. I have an example.
While you do that, I'll read you some that are more comments.
Okay.
Okay. He never knew, McLean Kirkwood is saying, he never knew Jeff self-published these books. Holy moly. Let's see. Skip Bryan is saying, I'd love if my grandkids could watch this. They all draw. Seeing a pro would be an incentive. Skip, you may watch this after we're finished, anytime. We're live now, but these videos you can always queue up and watch from start to finish later. So hope you do that. Oh, here's some great questions I really want you to answer. Okay, are you ready for another one?
I'm ready.
Okay. Peterson Muldoon is saying, how do you balance out the comedy and sweetness of the Bones, the cousins, with the dramatic and intense backdrop of Thorn's world?
That is a great question, and it's something like I have trouble discussing with Hollywood executives. They don't understand how if Thorn is the character who has a Luke Skywalker arc.
Right, because she's a princess.
It's like a Sleeping Beauty story. She turns out she's a princess.
But by the way, she's not your typical princess. She's fierce and strong.
She's awesome. Her grandma Ben is
She just
awesome.
happens to be the inheritor of the kingdom. There's no princessy, traditional princessy stuff.
Yeah, and I forget what we were just saying. How I balance
it, and you're trying to explain to Hollywood executives.
Well, the best way I can describe it is that the Bones are the stars of the story, and their job is to help Thorn on her hero's journey. Sort of like, and this is an old black and white movie reference, but it's the Marx Brothers in A Night at the Opera. That is a really good movie that holds up to this day, and the Marx Brothers are cartoon characters. Nobody else in the world even notices that they're cartoon characters, and their costumes are absolutely ridiculous. And they cause chaos. It's chaos. It's ridiculous. It's funny. And the story in that is not about the Marx Brothers. It's about the young ingenue opera performers who are being kept apart by a jealous
circumstances,
by a jealous opera guy, and it's just not that difficult to do as long as you just have to remember that the bones of the stars, and I never forgot that because I loved them.
They're so cool.
They're my little guys.
So I bet other people wonder this, and I have always wondered this. They're like, how did you come up with the idea of turning bones into characters? And I know this goes way back. So now you're going to get the deep backstory.
Here, hand me that. I found. I'm going to show you this. I was being interviewed on stage by Scott McCloud, and he asked me, "When did you do the first drawing of Bone, and do you still have it?" And I said, "No, I don't still have it. I drew it when I was 5." But my mother was in the audience that night, and afterwards she says, "I do have that drawing. I kept it in the closet." So here it is. I don't know. Can you see that?
How does that look?
Should I lift it up?
Pull down a little. Pull toward you a little.
Oh, this way?
Yeah. There you go.
So there it is.
You can lift it up to the
I don't know
camera a little bit. No.
All right.
Okay.
All right.
But
so there it is.
Incredible. That is 5-year-old Jeff Smith
and
drew that. It's a bone.
Actually, he's angry and yelling, and I don't know what my 5-year-old issues were. But the angry part went away very quickly, and he became Phone Bone, who's kind of like a more everyman. And this character came back as Phony Bone. He's the angry one.
So that is just so incredible to think that you dreamed these characters up when you were 5 years old.
That's right.
And maybe this does take a child's imagination to do something so original, right? To turn bones into characters.
The reason
they're bones. They're literal bones.
They do kind of look like Pluto cartoon dog bones, but the real reason that ended up that way is because in the 60s, I was surrounded by a particularly rich cartoon environment, cartoon heavy. It was the height of Snoopy and the Red Baron in Peanuts. The Peanuts cartoon shows were on. Walt Disney was still alive and was on television every Sunday night to come out and introduce, and sometimes Donald Duck would run around on his desk. So I was very aware that Charles Schulz made up Charlie Brown and Snoopy, and that Walt Disney made up Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck. And I wanted to make up a cartoon character, and this little guy that I just showed you, and here he is still, just kind of stuck around. I mean, I don't know why I kept drawing him. I just thought for some reason he was fun, and I kept at him. But I made a slight miscalculation. I forgot that Bugs is a bunny, Mickey's a mouse, Donald's a duck. And I didn't put ears on him or a nose or a tail. And so I just had these things that had the classic American pear-shaped big-nosed Bigfoot design, but I didn't make them animals. They just had to become bones. They're just creatures. Right. They're just bones.
But it's so awesome.
I love it when little kids ask me, ask me like, well, what are they though? And I'll say they're bones. They're from Boneville.
So funny. We have a few more technical questions. Okay, very specific from Donald Peters. It's Winsor Newton Series 7, but what size?
One size.
One. Okay.
The number one brush.
Okay, and.
Good question.
Yes, good one. Okay, on behalf of Hugh, age 9, Candy Ames Murphy is asking, how long does it take to finish each book? I think you answered that earlier.
I would say it's about a year. It's about a year. Each book had about 6 chapters in it, and each chapter took 2 months, some a little less, some a little more. So it was about a year per book. And then another 6 months just to color it.
Right. And the coloring, so you didn't do the coloring for these books. Did you do any of the coloring or someone else?
Steve Hammaker, who designed the toys with me. I didn't bring any of his design toys, but I have
let's show some of the bone toys.
I have like all sorts of little bone thingies. Here's Foam Bone, and here's Smiley Bone. There we go, there's Foam Bone. Oh, and
of course,
here's Bartleby,
the Melville reference. Can we get Bartleby in there?
Bartleby is actually adorable. I can't draw anymore. All right.
He's so good. Okay.
This guy who worked for us designing our toys,
He's also a colorist?
Yeah, well, he wasn't, but when we talked to Scholastic and they wanted, we discussed how do we make it different from the black and white books that I've been telling you that my wife and I were publishing on our own. We could have just colored it we just could have left them in black and white, but we thought, why don't we take an opportunity to make them different? And he asked if he could take a crack at it. And he did a great job.
He did a great job. The colors are fantastic.
I helped. I mean, we sat there side by side and learned how to color together. But it's his palette, and I think it's outstanding. He colored a later book of mine called Rassel, which is here. Let me show you.
Here we have it.
This is coming out.
Now this is for grown-ups.
Well, it's not for little kids. It's
or
sort of like
I guess a teenager would.
A teenager can handle it. It's nothing that you don't see on Law and Order. Maybe an extra boob.
Look, my 15-year-old is currently watching It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. So
yeah, but the coloring he did in here, it's a science fiction noir, and the coloring in this is absolutely, I think, one of the best coloring jobs I've ever seen in an American comic. It's really parallel universes, it's Tesla's journals, it's conspiracy theories. It's a lot of fun. And that's coming out in paperback this year for the first time.
Danny Goldner is saying, can you show us the cover of the new book? Would that just meaning Smiley's Dream Book?
You got it, yes. Okay,
let's do that. We showed that earlier, but let's show it again. Now, this is the picture book for, obviously for the younger generation.
And if you're like me, you're a geek and you like to see what's underneath the dust jacket. So there's the dust jacket.
Yay!
Okay, it's actually a very beautiful, beautiful book.
It's really nicely made.
It's about 46 pages.
It's a counting book. If you have a
it's
toddler
dreams,
just learning how to count, it's a
flying.
Dream story. It's about.
Oh, what's this on the back here?
Oh wow! Extra bonus if you buy the book.
Is it in the page? There we go. The answer to that question is next year.
So that's Phony Bone saying, when do I get my own book? So so there will be another and hopefully even more picture books.
Yes, there's another book. It's already finished. It'll be coming out in spring.
Because they're really perfect picture book characters.
2019.
And speaking of your picture books, let's give a shout out also to your very first picture book, I think, would be Little Mouse, which you published with Toon Books.
Yes.
Colin Burke is
saying, will
Little Mouse be having another, Little Mouse Gets Ready, right? Will Little Mouse be having another outing anytime soon?
He might. The publisher, Francois Mouly of Toon Books, has made it very clear that I am welcome to do another one, and I think she'd like me to.
I will say, honestly, that is a great, great picture book for very little kids, and I would love if you do another one.
I have a friend, Judd Winnick. He's also a good cartoonist. Does Hilo, and his son was probably 3, I think, when I did Little Mouse Gets Ready. And he sent me a video, and he said, get ready. He does this every time. And he got to the part, first when he gets to the part where the little mouse puts his tail through the tail hole, he falls on the floor.
It's about Little Mouse getting dressed.
Yeah, right. I actually have a copy of it. Vijay, can you? It's in my portfolio.
Let's just show that one. It's a really fun.
And then there's a part where his clothes explode off, and I swear to God, this 3-year-old kid, he's on a wooden floor, and he's doing the curly shuffle. Where he lays down and goes, he's like screaming and screaming with laughter.
Here it is.
Here we go.
Little Mouse Gets Ready.
Little Mouse Gets Ready. And I'll show you just very quickly.
And it won the Geisel. I forgot
Geisel
that.
Honor.
Which is because it's a great first reader, right, for a kid just learning to read.
My 3-year, he's learning to get dressed. And it's the first thing he does is he has to put on underwear and put his tail on the tail.
That's a big laugh. That page gets a big laugh.
And then there's a reveal at the end. I won't give that away.
Let's not give the reveal. Right. Okay.
Here you go.
All right. Awesome. Okay. Well, we are going to have to wrap up fairly soon, but
you
made great progress here. So this is the cover. If you joined us late, what Jeff is inking now is the cover of the original Bone comic book.
Bone #1. It came out in July of 1991.
But he's updated a little bit.
It was originally a black and white underground comic.
And now these characters have entered the cultural
zeitgeist. Is that the word you're going for?
Right?
All right.
From underground comics to the Scholastic Book Fair. So that's quite a journey that these characters have had and that you've had.
Yes, and it's very fun because now there's new first and second graders coming every year. It's great.
Oh, it's so great. Well, here's a question from one of your young fans. Vivian, her mom, Diana Cluth, is saying, Vivian, age 10, asks, what was your inspiration for creating the rat creatures and Bartleby? So these are the sort of
these are the bad guys.
Bad guy characters.
Well, I needed bad guys, and I will tell you, when I was young, I was probably 10 or something. I was playing tag with some friends, and it was summer, and it was getting late, and it was starting to get dark, and it was that time of night when it's the gloaming, it's kind of blue,
right?
And we were playing around, and I was by myself in the backyard for a few moments, and out of the corner of my eye, there are a couple of bushes over here which were black now because it's getting dark, and there's a shadow between them, and something big and lurched forward between the two bushes, just out of the corner of my eye. Just went real quick, just whoom. I'm done.
Oh, you're done. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I'm going to make the whole cover.
Okay.
But this figure, I saw it, and I let myself. You know how you can kind of let yourself get scared? You go, I'm going to go with it a little bit, and I let myself kind of get freaked out. You let the hair in the back of your head stand up, and as an adult, I'm pretty sure it was a raccoon or a cat.
But it looked huge.
But in my imagination, it was a rat creature, and that's what I based the rat creatures on.
And that's really what they look like. Now that you mention it, they look just like what you think you see in the shadows.
Yes, exactly.
Until they come into focus, then they have that weird shape. But,
so how much time do we have?
Right,
do we have time to put the eyes in, or are we done?
Yeah, you want to just put, sure, let's put a few eyes in, and then we'll wrap, just because this is a very special edition of New York Times Books Videos.
Thank you, everyone who tuned in. It's so fun.
It's so amazing. Well, while you're, I'll throw a few more questions at you. Okay, we have some questions about what you're reading now and what you think of webcomics. What are you liking now in sequential art, and what do you think of webcomics?
I love webcomics. I'm not sure I'm quite up to date, but I love like Kate Beaton stuff.
Oh yeah,
Harker Vagrant, and because of that, she and I have become friends. I think there's a great deal of potential in it. I dipped my toe into the webcomics with something called Tukey. But I didn't quite have the personality or at the time, you really need to invest into not just the comic itself, but the real platform. And
staying active.
Yeah, back in the day with my comic books, we used to have letters pages. Like people would actually send in letters.
So you have like 2 weeks to think about it.
Yeah, and then you write answers, and there was a real connection between the readers and myself, and I remember that. And that's what's there, and I actually think that's very exciting.
Right, but now it's very instant, right?
It's so instant, and I'm just not hip.
The metabolism is different.
Yeah, it's too much for me, man. All right, I'm going to just really quickly ink these in with it.
Okay.
I'm going to cheat here.
Right.
Just get a couple of eyeballs in here.
So there's a marker, and the eyeballs are in the cave, right, or in the.
Yeah, they kind of just represent, the rat creatures or the dragon or, the townspeople that are out to get them. I'm not going to put too many. We just don't have that much time.
Yeah. Okay. What else? Let's see. What are some other ones that we haven't? Any advice you would give now for someone who wants to become an illustrator?
My advice is, if you like comics, find the cartoonist who you like and learn how he's doing it. Figure it out. I mean, obviously, if it's an artist, you can copy them, but do more than copy. Try to find patterns, learn how they're doing it, study their drawings, see how they make things move from panel to panel. That's the best way to do it. It's the only way to do it. And even if you can't do it as good as the person you're copying, that's your style. Right. Your failure to do that is actually your style. So that's a good thing.
I've never heard it put quite that way. That's fantastic. Okay, Jeff, we're going to have to say goodbye.
All right.
We'll do this all day.
There's the drawing.
There's Smiley's dream book. There's the drawing. Anything else we wanted to show people really quickly? We had this. Let's just stick that in at the very end.
This was my first graphic novel.
Age?
I don't remember, 8, 9, probably 9. And it was called Phone Bone in the Gem. And it's got Phone Bone and Phony Bone right on the cover. Phony Bone is bossing Phone Bone around, and here's Smiley Bone crashing through the wall and causing chaos. And so there you go, all three bones.
Great advice
He's got a diamond,
too, right?
Well,
stick with the characters that really live in you.
I mean, I got better. You'll get better.
You'll get better, but the point is that these characters have been with you
for my whole life, and I've enjoyed them. And I studied not just comic books, but I studied books. I studied film, not in classes, but just that's what I enjoy. I enjoy looking at well-made films and reading well-made books.
Oh, it's so good to hear that. And we enjoy reading your books and possibly looking at the film soon.
But you never know.
Yep, for Bone, right? It should be coming.
It should be,
right.
But I don't know if it is.
All right, well, thank you so much, Jeff Smith, for coming to our New York Times studio and showing us your art and talking about the journey of Bone. And there he is. Hi. There he is, in case you're wondering what he looked like. All right, thanks again, and come back soon.
Thank you.